You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionFit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for a little program we like to call around these parts, the Option Block, your bi-weekly options extravaganza. If you want to join us in the live party, the Secret Club Funhouse, then, of course, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club is the place to go. Speaking of which, looking in here in the live chat, looks like we got a new name. I like that. I like seeing all the new people joining us all the time here. People join all the time, but I like to see it when you can make the live as well. Random Prime. I like that handle. Are you a random Optimus Prime? You've been listening to the shows. That would be in keeping with our 80s theme. He says, hello all, just joined after listening to basically the first 400 episodes over 2 years. Oh, good for you. I'm really looking forward to scumming your VIX predictions, making fun of particular co-hosts, and perfecting the art of the put fly. Game on. Wow, you have been listening. You know your game, sir. Well, welcome, Random Fly, and everyone else who's joined us recently. A lot of folks coming in to kick off the new year and to end the last year. So welcome to all of you out there. I look forward to all of your scumming and everything else and making fun of the Rock Lobster and everything else that we like to do here on the show. Again, you guys want to join the party for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. Remember, just me, you, and Random Prime here. Don't tell anybody else. And of course, you want to listen after the fact. It's available everywhere. And of course, you want to keep those questions and comments coming. Keep hitting us up. You know where to find us at Options on most of the major social media platforms. Questions at theoptioninsider.com also works. Carrier pigeon smoke signals, they tend to work. Morse code, I've kind of let my merit badge lapse in that, so I'm not that up to it anymore. But you could try. Maybe our producers can fill in the gaps for me. And you know what else is going to help me fill in the gaps? Because it's one of those rare days where the boys from the land of the pit are elsewhere. I think they have something going on. I think it's called like Tradosaurus. They're trying to rip off the old monster truck Truckosaurus. They would bring in Truckosaurus and he would roar and have a good time. They're doing the trading version of that. So they're off hanging out with Tradosaurus. That means it's me and the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, A, welcome back to the program, and B, we don't need no stinking Tradosaurus. We got the Option Block, sir.
That's right. Great to be here as always, and I remember I missed those days of when my son was 4 years old and we used to take him to all the monster truck shows. Love those monster trucks. My kid
was never into those. I've actually never been to a monster truck show. I'm speaking solely from lack of experience. I've seen the commercials for Truckosaurus. I've never actually been. So hey, Uncle Mike, one day, you and I, we're going to hit up a monster truck rally. I've heard, all I know is that they're deafening because they're extremely loud. But other than that, you and I will just have a low-rent fun time at the monster truck rally. What do you think?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that? I'm a little hard of hearing right now.
Someone who's been to one or two or maybe 100 as we keep on rolling. Let's get out of monster trucks and into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And quite frankly, it's been an intriguing start to the year. It really depends. Depends where you're looking out there, what kind of week and what kind of year you're having. Because, like I mentioned, I joked at the beginning of the show, beginning of the year, that if you were trading Tesla, you were up 11%, and you're looking pretty good. You could sell in the first day of January, which was January 3rd, not January 1st, and then go away the rest of the year, and you're looking pretty good. You beat most major indices in most major years. Ford said, hold my beer the next day, taking off to the races. Then we've seen a little bit more mixed action coming on of late. We saw markets rallying, then kind of selling off later on in the day. Now today we have a bit of a mixed bag out there coming into showtime with the Dow off a little over 0.1%, and S&P and NASDAQ both up about 0.25%. NASDAQ's been kind of taken on the chin a little bit of late, as well as some of these high-flying tech names getting dragged a little bit. I wouldn't say close to Earth because they still have a long way to go, but closer to Earth. That means we're seeing vol a little bit higher right now than it was on our last show. VIX at about a little north of a 19 handle. We kicked off the show about 19.1. That puts it up nearly 2 points, about 1.9 points from where it was on Monday. So much for the approach to volatility that we had coming into the year. It was kind of like, shrug the shoulders, gently erode back down. Nope. We're popping back up here on our second show of the year. VVIX 116. So remember, we were joking. Maybe it could break 100 again sometime soon. Nope, not this week. Up 9 points from Monday's show. VXX getting the erosion back in the other direction. So it's inhaling again as opposed to exhaling. Up to about 1885 when we kicked off the show. It's up about 0.75 points. UVXY, same thing, up about 0.75 points as well, up to about 1275 when we kicked off the show. It seemed like that one was heading for reverse split territory. It was imminent. And now getting a little bit of a respite from that. And Vol Q, 2285. That puts it up, oh my goodness, almost 5 handles, 4.75 points. Like I mentioned, a little bit of turbulence out there in the NASDAQ territory of late. So intriguing stuff. Of course, today, a bit of an inauspicious day. 1 year ago, we had all that dust up down there in the Capitol and the madness and maelstrom that ensued. It seems like that was 5 lifetimes ago at this point. It does not seem like that was exactly a year. I remember vividly where I was and what I was doing. My kid was remote schooling at the time, so we went out, got some food for lunch, and walked back, and then we happened to be sitting there eating it as we saw images of someone sitting in the speaker's chair who clearly was not the speaker. He kind of just shrugged his shoulder. I turned to him, I said, this is not normal. I know the last few years of your life, your frame of reference has been thrown completely askew, but this is not something you should ever expect to see in your lifetime, let alone people marching through the halls of Congress with their headdresses and all sorts of madness. So yes, it is early January. Last couple of years has proven to have some shocks in store for us. Uncle Mike, sir, what do you have in store for us as we kick off this second episode of the Option Block and we say the heck with Tradosaurus and those Pip Boys, sir?
Those bums. Yeah, I remember last year and on the 6th and just being scared to death from the standpoint of the market and just doing a lot of adjustments, to say the least. And then it really didn't matter that much. And I think that was just the day that I couldn't say what I've said for almost 20 years in the business. I used to say, you could say things like, well, let's say that we get attacked and the market goes way down, or let's say that we have a global pandemic and the market goes way down. Let's say I can't say any of those things anymore. So that was the day that I just stopped saying those things. And I normally, if you just said, let's say that we have an insurrection on the Capitol, and there's people sitting in the chair of the Speaker of the House, and just all those things that you just described, I would have bet anything that the market would have gotten tanked, and it didn't. And that was just, it still boggles my mind to this day that we didn't have more of a downward reaction from that. So kind of crazy when you think of it. Also today I was doing an annual review with a client, and they're saying, you know what, we always talk on January 6th. I'm like, oh, how do you remember that? He's like, well, I just got my notes about the Capitol from last year, and Or he said, I got something that popped up on my phone from an old text, and I saw that we were talking that day too. So I'm like, well, maybe we should do another day going forward. But anyway, just with what's happening over the course of the last couple days, the Fed has decided, it looks like from their notes, looks like they're going to set up policies to where the market doesn't like them very much. And all of this downturn started happening roughly 1 o'clock Central Time yesterday when the Fed notes were released. And so this is definitely a reaction to the Fed. Now, what remains to be seen is this going to be something that will continue to change things, or is this going to be like the new generation of Trump announcements? I remember in the Trump era, he would say, "Oh, we're going to tighten tariffs with China." Market would drop, and then if you let it drop a little bit, then you get long some more deltas, and then all of a sudden he says, "Oh, well, maybe I didn't really mean it that way," and then the market goes higher. Maybe this is the new version of that for the Biden administration. They say that they're going to quit the asset buyback program, lower the Fed's balance sheet, raise interest rates, or one of those things. Market goes down, then maybe this is the buying opportunity. Maybe that's the Biden era's gift to us, like it seemed the Trump era's gift to us was whenever he would talk about raising tariffs on China. Who knows? Remains to be seen. So we have that. What really kind of I'm surprised that we are selling off as much as we are in the 10-year note. Especially, it's kind of held steady throughout the day today, even when the markets were down for the day. So we've had a very volatile day in stocks, but in terms of the 10-year note, it's just kind of gone down and kind of sat there. The other things with which I'm seeing are the fact that within the sectors, we're still down in technology right now. S&P is up roughly 12 points. XLK is still down slightly. Technology is something that drove this market down fairly significantly yesterday. But the one thing that is still a positive that the market doesn't seem to care about is energy as well as financials. And so apparently the thought of rising interest rates makes people want to buy financials and energy, which to some extent can make sense from the standpoint of the financials, in that if we have higher interest rates, then banks and brokerage firms can create wider spreads, and that could ultimately be good for them. But the bad part of it is that if you do have those wider spreads, that's a good thing for them. But if you don't have as many people wanting to borrow money, then that could be a bad thing. There'll be less appetite for risk, less desire for businesses to expand and needing loans to do that, less desire for people to trade on margin, and the list goes on. So it's kind of a two-headed sword when looking at investing in financials due to higher interest rates. There's always a good and a bad, it seems. And then finally, looks like earlier today we had a really nasty sell-off in what's that thing called that I hate? Bitcoin. But it looks like it's come back a little bit. Still down on the day, but definitely in the sell-off world. And that is what I am seeing today.
Uncle Mike, are you talking down the crypto again?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of a new website I wanted to start. bitcoinsucks.com.
I'm sure probably someone has that, I'm sure. But if not, you should definitely get that. I have a feeling that would get some hits, sir. That would get some traction. Just to have all the email go to like some spam address, because you don't read any of that. But it would be some hate mail. But other than that, you probably will get some traction out. Then just put your videos up there, and people will be like, why am I getting this guy teaching me about options on bitcoinsucks.com? And then but I like this stuff, and maybe they want to learn more. So there you go. A backdoor way to lure them to the dark side of stcharleswealth.com. Speaking of the dark side, let's see what we've got going on here. Maybe light side, maybe dark side. We'll see what we've got here in terms of action out there on the tape today. By the way, you're right, Uncle Mike, Bitcoin at about a 43,000 right now, off nearly 6% on the day. Let's see how low did it get earlier in the session. Looks like it got down to about 42,000 and change, 42,400 or so. So not a good day for the old BTC. Most other major crypto following suit. Solana back around 153, ETH 3,400. So yeah, levels we haven't seen in a little bit out there in the crypto land. If you want more, check out the Crypto Rundown on Monday. Let's head on into the major indices first. VIX looking kind of light, all things considered out there right now. Only 182,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV, 631. So coming back off that roughly 730 that it was not that long ago, so off about 100,000 contracts from where it was a couple of weeks ago. And, of course, still looking pretty elevated compared to where it was not that long ago, a month and a half ago or so, where it was almost about to break 400K in the wrong direction. SPY right now at about 3.33 million. A lot of threes out there in SPY land right now. The ADV about 5.2 million. The S closing in on a million contracts, about 850,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV about 1.55 million. And the small caps, at least IWM, at about 403,000, which is pretty much exactly half of their reduced ADV now. It's down to about 810. That's still a lot higher than it was, let's say, a few months ago, and it was about 530 or so, but also well south of the 1.1 or so million that it hit not too long ago as well. Those levels were unsustainable, so now getting back to a more, dare I say it, reasonable level of volume. By the way, if you like Russell and small caps, and you like a little bit more Russell Rhodes in your life, stay tuned. We've got the Once in Future. I do believe he might actually be the official Dr. Bix now, joining us a little bit later today on TWIFO. So stay tuned for that. It should be fun. His first appearance here in the new year. He and I are supposed to do a panel together next week here in Chicago. Unfortunately, the wave of Omicron putting the kibosh on that. So we'll have him here virtually instead, where it's fun and also safe for everybody involved. Let's get on out to the top 10 most actives, see what you folks are up to out there this week, what some of these single names are that you guys are lighting up with today. And it cost you 287,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That's not nothing. That's decent. Usually anything even approaching 300K is decent, and 287 is certainly nothing to sneer at. Baba takes our top 10 spot today, 287,000 contracts. Number 9 is Lucid. It's one of those days, listeners. 314,000. Number 9, we're already over 300,000. That's pretty impressive. Number 8, AMC, 353. Quick scan, yes, its symbol twin is also lurking. So that's one of those top 10s, listeners. AMC number 8, 353. Let's go see where the on-again, off-again king of the memes is hanging out today. 2264, off 11 cents, or about 51%. A far cry from the 145 strike. Yet I would wager pretty heavily, I haven't looked at the numbers yet, I wager pretty heavily that more of those 145s have traded this week. Maybe we'll find out on Oddities on Friday. Number 7, we've got Softy back in the top 10, 356 for Microsoft. Number 6 is Facebook, 393. Number 5 is AMD, the other half of the symbol twins there, 397. So at number 5, we've yet to break 400K. You got to go all the way up to number 4. But the number 4 leapfrogs past 400K all the way to over 500,000. It's NVIDIA, number 4, 522,000. So an interesting top 10 today. Number 3, it's Ford. Man, what's been up with Ford of late? They got a bee in their bonnet. Off to the races, like I mentioned earlier this week. And today, getting some of that back again, up another 2.25%, or about half a buck. And good for 640,000 contracts. Number 2, yes, I said number 2. It is the Fruit Company with 1.17 million contracts. It actually can sell off about exactly 1% today, trading a little bit north of 173 right now. That means the big dog is Tesla, threatening to break the 1,000 levels. Let's see, did it break it earlier today? No, it got to a low of 1,031. Right now it's at about 1068.5. Still off nearly $20 on the day, or nearly 2%. Good for 1.38 million. So it seems like Tesla is coming out of the gate swinging this year. They're saying, Apple, we're coming for your crown. Last year it was clearly Apple's crown. We'll see. A couple of times now this year, so far, Tesla has toppled Apple from the throne. We'll see if that will continue. And speaking of thrones, Mr. Uncle Mike, we knew that last year was going to be a record year once we blew past the level of options volume that we hit in the record year that was 2020. We blew past that by mid-October. So we knew the rest of the year was just gravy. It was just a question of how much. And now the numbers are in. I said on Monday's show, you know the OCC folks are going to hit us up with these numbers immediately after the show. That's pretty much what happened. So we have them for you now, listeners, from our friends over there at OCC. The official breakdown for the insane year that was 2021. Everyone, myself included, thought $7.5 billion was a ridiculous amount of volume, just kind of outside the norm, outside the pale. So many crazy things had to happen in society to make that happen. If you agree with that, then perhaps don't listen to the rest of this, because it's just going to throw your worldview into a tizzy, because last year, yet another new record year for the options market. OCC cleared 9.93 billion total contracts, That's combining options and futures. Strip out the futures, 9.87 billion contracts. So you're talking pretty much 9.9, just a shade under 10 billion with a B. Options contracts. I mean, these are ridiculous numbers. I mean, you're talking, multiple times what we were putting up not too long ago. You're talking 4.4 billion contracts, about 4.9 billion contracts in 2019. So that's almost double the year prior to that. You go back, even as 2017, you're getting right around 4 billion or so, 3.7 if you add in, equity and ETFs and stuff. So you're talking multiples of what we were doing in the business not that long ago. 2017, 2018 ain't that long ago. And now we're talking 10 billion almost. And the pace we were hitting towards the end of the year, listeners, close to 1 billion contracts a month. If we could stay on that pace, you're talking almost 12 billion next year. So again, these are just crazy, crazy times here. Well, let's break it down a little bit here. By the way, in case you can't do the math yourself, that is a 32% increase over 2020. Listen, I mean, just insanity. I did not think that was possible when we kicked off last year. I thought 2020 was an aberration. We will not see that again. And man, the cynic in me was once again proven wrong. Uncle Mac was talking about the market shrugging off, many shocks, including the Jan 6th insurrection. But put the options volume in that as well. They have continued to just shrug off naysayers and doubts. When we all went electronic, everyone thought that would really gum up the works and kill liquidity. Instead, retail and other things have filled the gap, and it's just been off to the races from an overall volume perspective. I mean, the CME delisted the big S&P futures and options. That's how crazy a time we're in now, and yet it hasn't impacted overall volume out there on the CME front as well. We'll get to that a little bit later on TWIFO. Let's get into the actual numbers now. Again, total exchange listed options volume for the year, 9.87 billion contracts. D's volume, if you want to pull that out, 845 million. So that's actually a little bit lighter than some people were expecting. Again, it's December, so things are going to be light towards the end of the year. So a little bit off that north of, I think November is about 930, so off that nearly 950 million pace they were setting not that long before that. But we'll see if January can pick it up again. Equity options, let's drill down a little bit farther. 9.36 billion contracts, up 33.7% from 2020. That number includes ETFs. If you pull out the ETFs, they were about 2.7 billion. That's a 5.1% increase. That's interesting. ETFs kind of lagging behind everything else out there. You think BITO alone would have accounted for a decent share of that. If you pull out index options as well, index options for the year was up 8.8%. We don't have a total here. It looks like the numbers got screwy there for the indexes, but index volume up 8.8%. Year-to-date ADV, so we ended the year. How many contracts were we putting up a day by the end of the year? Almost 40 million, listeners, 39.1 million contracts. So you're talking almost 40 million contracts a day. When I first got into business, that was many weeks, if not months, worth of volume. So, yeah, you're talking about a very different beast. Uncle Mike, we knew last year was going to be good. We didn't really know it was going to be this good. What are your thoughts on yet another insane record year for the options biz, sir?
It was another insane record year for any business, quite honestly. It's really just unique how things have been happening this year, and how this is just a year of up is down, down is up, and it's not surprising. The fact that COVID was gone, COVID is back. We have Delta, we have Omicron. I'm holding out for Mu myself, but the world with which we live, if you'd have told me this, I would definitely have taken the under on this a year ago. But with everything that's happened, I can't say I'm surprised.
Well, maybe, Uncle Mike, I can surprise you with this next segment. Are you ready? Because the Pit Boys aren't here, we're going to have some fun. Are you ready for a little 2021 top 10 countdown, sir?
I am.
All right, let's kick it off. Let's do it. All right, listeners, it's that time. Kicking off the new year, that means it's time to look back and see what you folks really liked on this show. What were some of your most popular episodes? We've done this for a few other programs now, and I've seen the numbers. Whenever we do these, they tend to rank very highly, so you folks clearly like yourselves a little bit of top 10. So let us never say that we're not here for you folks here. All right, Uncle Mike, let us begin. Actually, before we begin, don't look at the notes here because the answers are in front of you. But are there any particular episodes or moments from the show that stand out to you that you think would make the top 10 this year?
Perhaps our debate on the Demolition versus the Road Warriors?
Perhaps. I don't remember exactly what episode that was on, but that could be there. We could see. We shall see. Any others that stand out?
That one, and I would say just something around in January, right after the insurrection. Those are probably the two that come to my mind of being the most noteworthy.
January certainly stands out, and it has been a dominant theme in some of our other shows. Let's see if that continues the pace here in the option block. So our top 10 for last year, listeners. Number 10. I knew this had to be in there somewhere, and it comes in at number 10, listeners. It was our 1,000th episode spectacular. Not many podcasts in the planet have done 1,000 episodes, let alone on this network. This is the first show to hit 1,000 on this network, which, by the way, like I said, this January, 15 years. How crazy is that for the network? So a little bit of a feather in our cap there. But 1,000th episode, we knew we had to go big for that, and we did. We had a mega extravaganza. A lot of previous co-hosts and guests joined us on the show or sent in their well wishes. We had you folks join us live. It was also pretty much the kickoff party for the Pro and the Plus and the Secret Club and all the fun stuff that has come since. So it's been a fun party. Mr. Uncle Mike, number 10, our 1,000th episode spectacular. What say you, sir?
That one, if I'd have thought of it beforehand, that one, I actually would have thought that one would be number one in hindsight. So I forgot about the 1,000th episode. And I actually have, I got to send you a picture of it. One of my clients and a listener actually sent me a Christmas gift with a mug commemorating the 1,000th episode. It's really cool. I'll have to send you a picture of it.
They sent you a mug? They didn't send me one for the 1,000th episode? What are they doing? Give them my address and have them correct that forthwith. That sounds nice. I love when people celebrate my shows with other people. It makes it fun. But yeah, you're right. Option block. That shows how popular the other episodes were when the 1,000th episode spectacular, only number 10, sir.
Then, and looking back on it, just in all the years we've been doing it, that probably was my favorite episode of the show. And all that one, and perhaps the live one we did in the basement of that restaurant by the SIBO. Those are probably... That
was a good one. That's what we had.
My two favorite ones that we've ever done. And so I'm surprised that wasn't number one.
We did that one. The one we did live here where we actually kicked off the live streams for the first time. We had the Viceroy all here live in studio. We had pizza and beer. That was a fun one as well.
That was.
And then taking over, you're right, Elephant and Castle here. We had Natenberg showed up. A bunch of people showed up for that one live. That was a fun one as well. We'll have to... people have been asking me and reminiscing about some of their favorite episodes that they've heard on the network. Someone brought up the other day about the episode we did with Options Express when they bought Optionetics. Remember that, Uncle Mike? And that was a very contentious thing, and we had to sit down with one of the co-founders of Options Express, then kind of holding their feet to the fire. All these episodes that have been lost to the sands of time. We've done so many now in 15 years, but now that it's our 15th anniversary, I think we'll have to go back and maybe, I've been talking about a while making a best of feed. I think we will do that and surface, or I should say remaster and resurface some of these episodes that are clearly need to be revisited and are worth doing. Probably we'll have to put that live show in there as well. What do you think, Uncle Mike?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Options Express one. So that one actually wasn't on the option block. That was on one of your other shows. I was actually Options Express bought Optionetics roughly a month before I left Options Express. And I remember at the time that you put on your network, you had actually interviewed me. And what they were doing, I had to go through, I guess I can talk about this now. I had to sit in front of the legal people, in front of the head of Brokers Express, who was our broker dealer back when we were doing commission-based stuff, and it was the sister company of Options Express. But I had to go through about an hour of prep time of what I could talk about, what I couldn't talk about, and they were preparing me for every possible thing, and that made me think, you know what? The fact that Optionetics is part of this company now really makes me happy I'm not part of this company anymore. The fact that you have to go through all this, and you were actually a very nice, polite interview. This was before we even worked together on the show. You just interviewed me as a representative of Options Express / Brokers Express, and It was a very pleasant interview experience, but it was a very miserable compliance experience.
See, your compliance, they knew I was a threat. They were preparing you. You didn't realize what you were in for, sir, but it was a fun time. You're right. You're right. That was definitely a sign that OX was perhaps heading in a different direction than when they started. By the way, our chat making a good point. That episode, the 1,000 episode spectacular, is also 4 hours long. So that's why it's number 10. You're right. It was like 4 episodes in one. It was a pretty epic extravaganza. Nonetheless, number 10. What a fun list. We've only done number 10. We're already having a fun time. Number 9. Let's go out here now to option block 968. Well, this is what you just talked about, Uncle Mike. It's our YOLO short squeeze madness in GameStop and Bed Bath & Beyond. This came out on January 25th. Of last year. Uncle Mike, I wonder, what could we possibly have talked about on that show, sir, from last January 25th?
Oh, what was it called? GameStop, I think? Yeah, that was insane. It was a very unique thing, just seeing how we had all the meme stocks and how everything was going higher and on all of the Reddit news. And so that's going to be, there's probably about maybe 10 times in my career that I know I'm going to remember the rest of my life, and that experience is definitely going to be one of them, when a company that's about belly up all of a sudden just goes to the moon as a stock.
I like looking at this top 10 here for the option block because it is a very representative sampling of our year. Some of our other shows have been heavy in one area of the year or the other, or one certain subject matter, but the OB top 10 is kind of all over the place, which I love. Number 8, we go to episode 1010. So we were just in January. We started off in May. We were in January. Now we're going out to July 1st with the revenge of the Option Block Quartet. You might say, what was that one about? That was the episode where it was me, you, Uncle Mike. It was the Rock Lobster. And we had the options guy, Mr. Overby, muscling his way in there as well. So that's why we had the Option Block Quartet, a rare quartet on the show, that episode. So that was a fun one, and clearly the listeners agreed, Uncle Mike, because it's there at number 8 on our top 10 countdown, sir. The revenge of the Option Block Quartet. What say you, sir?
Gotta love it. Yeah, Brian Overby, he's someone who's been in the business forever. He was actually came and left Options Express before I even was hired there. That's how long he's been around. So definitely good when you get everybody together. And one thing that a lot of people may or may not know is that the option business is a very small business in that it's very much everybody knows everybody. And even people who are competitors in the business, it's kind of like the cartoon where you have the sheep and the dog, to where they just beat the crap out of each other during the day. They clock out and then they're friends afterwards. And so it's always fun to have other people together on shows, and just one of the many reasons why our business is such a fun place to be.
You say small, I say incestuous. Both adjectives implying the same thing at the end of the day. Everybody knows everybody else pretty much out there as we keep going around. Hence Uncle Mike having to come speak with me years ago before he was even on the network. Let's go back to, let's see, now we're going back to the beginning of the year. We're going a little bit farther out there. We're going to February 8th to the option block 972, titled, simply enough, Tesla and Bitcoin, two volatile trades that trade great together. You could take that and extend it throughout most of 2021, and that title would apply throughout most of the year. We obviously were talking about it in light of the madness we had just seen. We were joking about Bitcoin earlier in the show, listen, but January was insane, not just for the broad market and for volatility. VIX, of course, spiked to about 37 in January of last year. Tesla was off to the races last year in January. And Bitcoin blew up, 30% in the first 5-7 days of the year last year. I mean, it was insane. It blew past 30, blew past 40,000 before you could blink. I mean, it was just insane times out there. And that was, of course, less than a year before that. It had been trading sub 4,000. So you're talking a substantial move in a very short period of time. Hence the title of that episode. Mr. Uncle Mike, an apt title if ever there was one. Tesla and Bitcoin, two volatile trades that trade great together, sir.
No question. And I think that just to me, Bitcoin is like the ultimate legalized pump and dump, in that and the fact that we have Tesla to go along with it, just magically Elon Musk will say, hey, we're accepting Bitcoin to buy Teslas, and then the value of Bitcoin goes higher. And then I'm sure he never would sell any at all, ever. I'm sure it would never happen. because Bitcoin's so tightly regulated, and there's no way he could get away with it anyway. But then he may, if he were that type of person, he may sell some Bitcoin and then say, oh, no, now we're not going to accept Bitcoin because it's bad for the environment. And then a few weeks later, when Bitcoin drops a little bit, oh, we're taking Bitcoin again. It's good for the environment again. And so the fact that you have Tesla and Bitcoin together, definitely it's a very 2021 episode, that's for sure.
The ultimate legalized pump and dump. Send your hate mail to Uncle Mike at St. Charles Wealth. Not to me, to him. Just leave me out of that. Send it to Uncle Mike, care of, what was it, bitcoinsucks.com? That's the URL you're going to get?
I should. If it exists, I should buy it.
You should check while I'm looking at the next one. Yeah. You should get that. That sounds like it's right up your alley. All right, number 6. We are moving around a little bit again. Only 3 days this time. We're going out to February 11th. Option block 973. And what we titled appropriately enough, the craziest trade in odd block history, ? If you listen to our 2021 wrap-up show we did at the end of the year last year, you know what trade I'm talking about, listeners. This was the Denison Mines trade. I profiled it again just a few weeks ago, so I won't go too deep into it again. But effectively, it was one of the crazier, certainly size calls we've seen, and just weirder ones. It was a stock that was trading at or below $1, hadn't traded much north of that in a substantial period of time, and someone came in and just bought up all of the 2.5 strike across the board, about $250,000 of the 2.5s. I believe it was in March. This was February. It's about a month and a half out. And then they went farther than that. They bought April's, another 50,000 of those. And so you could pick your poison wherever you wanted on this name, and you could buy the stock for below $1 and sell the 2.5 calls for, I think they were up to like 35 cents at some point, just in March alone, more than that if you went farther out. So it was like literally they were handing you back a substantial portion of your outlay on the stock, and you got it back very quickly because these things came crashing in as you knew they would because everyone and their mother sold them. And so it was, I don't like to say free money because there was some risk involved with it, but it was some of the easier money we profiled on the odd block, and certainly just one of the weirder ones. That amount of size, I mean, that much outlay you're spending, you could have bought a whole bunch of the stock and been looking a lot better now than they would with that one because that money all went the way of the dodo. We did not hit 2.5 by March expiration, let alone a little bit later in the year. So yes, Mr. Uncle Mac, I'm not sure how much you recall of this one, but it was a crazy one, and perhaps, dare I say it, the craziest trade in odd block history.
That would definitely have to be up there if it's not. I can't think of anything more crazy than a 35% premium on the stock going up 2.5 times.
Yeah, it was a good one. All right, let's go on out now. Now we're going back to June. So we're kind of jumping all over the place. I love it. Back to June 28th, to be precise, to Option Block episode 1009, Putting the Camel Clutch on Funeral Homes. I wonder who our featured wrestler of the week that week was. Yes, of course, it was the Iron Sheik. Some other things we talked about on that episode. Most active on our list of that day was Carnival Cruise Lines. That was a popular one back then. Oh, back to space. Space was coming on the radar after all the fights to space, of course, and Richard Branson, all that madness. And then, of course, we also had in there Wish. Wish was starting to come on the radar as kind of the new wave of meme stocks was coming in there, of course. Context Logic, so we had those ones. We had earnings that week in Bed Bath & Beyond and Micron, and some unusual activity in this was this was everyone's favorite, the Duke Energy, or somebody's call it the Duck, D-U-K. That was a hot one there for unusual options activity. And Uncle Mike, on that episode, you profiled buying garbage for your strategy block, sir. Do you recall that?
I don't recall it being that episode, but I do remember calling that. It's just one of those things that I've done a lot more of this year than I have in years past, is that if you don't want to be stressed out over the weekend and you got a short put spread on, or a short call spread for that matter, buy a Monday long spread that's the same strike prices, and you pay a penny for it or something really low, and helps you sleep a little bit easier over the weekend, I've found.
Some people have written in saying they don't like the wrestling thing. It is funny how many of the wrestling episodes are in our top 10 this year, Uncle Mike. I'm just putting it out there. Like number 4, you said the Camel Clutch. Now we're going to the perfect options traders. Uncle Mike, who could the wrestler that week have been, sir?
It had to have been Kurt Hennig.
Yes, it was indeed. Mr. Perfect himself. Our most actives for that day. Oh, by the way, this is August 30th, so jumping around again. I love it. We had Facebook and Palantir was a good one. Be Big back up there again. And Apple was a hot one that week. Of course, any week was Apple pretty much. Oh, our old friend Stone Cold was back. That time they had earnings that episode there. And Chewy, Uncle Mike's favorite, Five Below. And for the Odd Block, we actually had Be Big and PayPal out there. And Uncle Mike, for your strategy block, you talked about the importance of keeping it simple in your trading, sir.
Got to keep it simple. I can't think of any time in my 20 years in this business that I thought, you know what, I need to complicate things a little bit more.
So that's why you stopped doing those iron condor ratio reverse swaps, sir, because it wasn't worth it for you.
It just wasn't worth it.
All right, let's keep on rolling. Number 3 on our top 10 of last year, listeners. We're jumping to September now, September 9th, so a couple weeks later, to Option Block 1028, making big trades using kindergarten math. I remember this now because the Rocklops and I were talking about how we used to use essentially very basic fraction, addition and subtraction to calculate our trades on the trading floor. It was a fun conversation. We also talked about that day, GameStop was back in the headlines there. Be Big, kind of a bit of a repeat there, as well as Apple. We had earnings for GameStop and Lululemon and Dave & Buster's, so that was some hot one. And unusual activity. We were out to Cody, C-O-T-Y. That was a frequent offender of last year, and they had earnings that episode, as well as Vici Properties. I remember this one. That's a spinoff from Caesars out there. And Tap. And Uncle Mike, for your strategy block that episode, you talked about how you trade SPX and SPY, sir.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned using kindergarten math. I've been schooled and educated at higher level institutions on mathematical formulas for various things, and I'm in a career now to where most of the time I'm using the same arithmetic I was taught in grade school to come up with things and figure stuff out in my head for various ratios and things like that. And so it's interesting how that is. And SPX and SPY is actually one of them. I like to base my aggressive strategy on $1,500 per contract. And so, of course, if someone would, in theory, I don't think I have anybody this small, but let's say in theory I had someone with just $1,500. I don't know if I would do this strategy with them if I did, but I would put them in a one lot of SPY. And so if someone has $15,000, it would be a one lot of SPX. And then let's say they had, in theory, $16,500. It would be a one lot of SPX and a one lot of SPY to keep everything in tune with that. And so SPY and SPX, definitely something that I use the grade school math to do a computation in my head. And you guys talked about it on that show, so it all came full circle.
As we keep on rolling to number 2, our penultimate episode on our top 10 list here. We're going to June now, June 21st, to Option Block 1007, Getting Slaughtered by Death Trap Puts. Catchy title. Probably had something to do with the popularity of that episode. Of course, the Death Trap Puts listeners were very, very in-the-money puts that we started to see popping up around that time frame and towards the latter portion of the year. Other things we talked about in that episode, we kind of vented our spleen on various Fed governors coming out and saying different things that are contrary to what the Fed chairperson is saying. Again, that always rubs me the wrong way. We had most actives that day was Palantir, Wish, kind of seeing a bit of a broken record out there. Unusual activity, our old friend Stone Cold was popping up in the odd block that day, as well as Party City and Oracle. And Uncle Mike's odd block, or I should say Uncle Mike's strategy block, was selling short-term premium versus long-term premium, Uncle Mike.
Yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and a lot of it has to do where volatility is at different spots. So definitely an exciting number 2, to say the least.
Without looking, can you guess what our number 1 episode is, sir? You thought it was the 1,000th episode. A hint is not that.
I don't know what it would be then, unless it's just one of the episodes. I couldn't tell you then.
This one surprised me at first, then I looked at what we talked about, and I said, oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense now. Our number 1 episode for the year last year, listeners, the most popular episode of the Option Block, Option Block 1011 from July 8th of last year, where it was entitled Robbing from Options Traders. Uncle Mike, any idea what that episode was about?
robbing from option traders? I do not recall.
This was the wake of the Robinhood scandal where they got fined by FINRA, and so we kind of dove into and broke down in a lot of extensive detail the Robinhood options scandal, how much of a record fine they were being fined by the SEC and FINRA and everybody else, and we broke down a lot of the things that they were doing to incur that fine, how they weren't really, they were using bots to approve people, and it was a joke to get options approval, and they were clearing people for trades that they clearly had no competence or really ability to do, and things like that. So that was a very contentious issue. It clearly resonated with a lot of people because that was our number one episode for last year, Uncle Mike.
Yeah, I remember that now. I am surprised that made number one, though, but I remember that just because I just know the process, just being on the brokerage side of it at Options Express for a few years that I was, that people had to go through to get option approval, and it actually was an actual human set of eyes that would look at all, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of clients that Options Express had, and yeah, so the fact that they were using bots and just doing stuff to make it now, yeah. So I hate to say good for them that they got what they deserved, but good for them they got what they deserved for trying to do that.
That's what a legitimate options broker does. They have people look over the algorithms to make sure that things are happening the right way, and unfortunately that was not the case. But as I recall, I think it was a listener question who sent in some questions about that. That kicked off multiple weeks of discussion of that, not just on the option block. We talked about it on Boot Camp, and it was a contentious issue on a lot of those shows. I could see why that one would make it to the top of the list. So there you go, listeners, your top 10 episodes of the option block for the insane year that was 2021.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody. We've been gassing on a lot here, so let's just get to some of you folks here on the show. Let's also see what you guys have here on the brain, because it wouldn't be a celebratory episode from last year without getting some of you folks on the show. Let's check in really quickly right now with our question of the week. It is getting down to the wire. You got about a little less than a day now here, listeners, to get in there at Options. Make your voice heard. It's that time of year where we ask you guys, what do you think? Where do you think VIX will close at the end of the year? He made it easy for you. He gave you 4 ranges, but also if you want to become involved in the drawing, the giveaway for some prizes at the end of the year, then you got to give us a specific pick, and then the closest for you will win at the end of the year. We gave you 4 ranges. Will VIX be very elevated, so north of 25, somewhat elevated, so between 20 and 25, frothy, so between 15 and 20, or quiet, below 15. Mr. Uncle Mike, if you have a pick, have at it. And then more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for?
I'm going to say quiet and quiet on both accounts. I think that there's a lot of reason to believe that the VIX is going to finally, possibly, hopefully go down, and that's what I'm thinking.
Wow, you're thinking like a 12 handle to end the year? Maybe a 9? Ooh, single digits.
Not quite a 9, but 12 would not surprise me.
Well, let's see what our audience has on the brain. They're a little bit more elevated than you, Uncle Mike. They're going to frothy. They're saying 15 to 19.99 is winning our poll right now. About 43% of you choosing that. Number 2 is Uncle Mike's range, quiet, below 15, with about 29%. 23% saying 20 to about 25. Only less than 5.7% saying very elevated, north of 25. So no joy there for the level where we came in the year last year. We ended the first day of trading last year at about 27 last year, listeners. So apparently our folks out there not thinking a repeat of that for the end of the year. Let's look here really quick. Speaking of the end of the year, we had some fun things we pulled up here for some of our end of the year shows. And looking here right now, what you folks were thinking from, let's say, around this time last year. Because last year on January 26th, we asked you, it was obviously right on the heels of all this meme stock stuff kicking off. We said, hey, are you guys trading options on the current, we called it the short squeeze frenzy. No one was calling it the meme stock frenzy yet. Like GameStop and AMC and Bed Bath & Beyond and others. If so, what strategies are you using? We gave you 4 choices: buying calls /spread/flies, buying puts /spread/flies, selling puts /spread/flies, or other. And almost 60% of you said you were straight up just buying calls /spread/flies. I got a feeling a good chunk of you were in the just straight up buying calls area of that. So that's where you guys were hanging out about a year ago. Fast forward a little bit to April of last year. We asked you a similar question to where we asked right now. We asked you where will VIX end at the end of the year. This time in April 22nd to be precise, we asked you which of these levels will we hit first? A VIX of 14, an S&P of 4,300, Bitcoin of 70,000, or a WTI of 70. Well, we know Bitcoin's off the list because we got close to 70K, never really got there. And the SPX, I do believe, was the correct answer. You guys chose VIX by about a point. 26.3% of you saying VIX at a 14. We flirted with a 14 handle. We may have printed there briefly intraday. I got to go back and crunch the numbers list to see. But I know we got to closing. We got to about a 15.01. We never closed at a 14 handle. But the S, I'm pretty sure, hit 4,300. Well before, I should say, we saw anything like that in the VIX. Number 2 was S with 25.3%. It was a very evenly split poll. And then Bitcoin 70K was 24.2%. WTI 70, also 24.2%. You know, I will have to go look and see when we hit the 70 handle in WTI, because that could be a contender there as well. But we can take Bitcoin off the list. And you folks chose VIX, which is not the right answer either. It's between the S and WTI, and I'm leaning towards the S. Oh, Uncle Mike, here's one from last May. Well, we were joking with you because you were beginning your one of many rants about crypto at the time. And we said that week, there's a lot of red on the crypto screen this week. We put in parentheses, thanks, Uncle Mike, because it was your fault. We said, is this a momentary blip or a sign of things to come? Quite simply, if you could buy a 10% out of the money call expiring on December 31st on one of these crypto underlines, which would it be? We gave you 3 choices plus the ever popular other. We gave you Bitcoin, ETH, and Doge. And you guys overwhelmingly chose ETH, about 55%, only about 21% for Bitcoin, 14% for Doge, and about 10% for other. And again, this one, I have to go look and see when the date was. May was the beginning of that big sell-off, right? Late April into May of the crypto kind of sell-off in the middle of the year. So if you bought an out-of-the-money call in ETH at the beginning of the month, ETH was around 4,100 or so. So you didn't do as well as if you bought it later in that month when ETH got back down into the 2,000 handle range. So obviously, if you bought it later in the month, you did really well. So it kind of depends. But Uncle Mike, once again, I say shame to you, sir, for talking down crypto. How dare you?
Crypto sucks.
I bought you some time. Did you buy that URL?
I should have. I don't want to be associated with anything that's associated with crypto, even if it's bad now that I think about it.
Let's look here really quickly. Also asked you a couple of other fun things last year. Last October, everyone was all hyped for minis and nanos, and we heard about the launch of the new nanos, which I guess should be coming any day now. It's supposed to launch in January, if not Q1. I haven't heard a specific date yet from the SIBO, but we asked you guys back last October if you guys were interested in this, and almost 2/3, 64% said, yeah, heck no, and 36% saying, yes, you were. So not exactly a ringing endorsement there for nanos, but we'll see when these things launch. If people start trading them, that's what matters. Let's see, did you guys like volatility skew? We asked you that in November, if that's a good leading indicator for the underlying, and 57% of you said no, not a great indicator. 43% say yes, you rely on it. So interesting. And let's go really quickly. We asked you this one, Uncle Mike. Let's see if you have a guess for this one. We asked our people in September. People focus on different Greeks in their options, depending on their trading, depending on their style and their position, etc. Which Greek do you use the most in your options trading? You know what we gave you, Delta, Gamma, Theta, Vega. No room for Rho, nor did we put Rho in there. Uncle Mike, what do you think won our poll from last September, sir?
Well, I'm sure it was Delta, but I do remember this poll, and I remember just taking umbrage that you wouldn't put Rho in it. I was really ticked at the time.
Well, you need to write to Twitter and tell them to make a 5-choice poll option, and then we'll do that for you next time. But yes, no Rho. If it was there, you would have seen the 0.01% it would have received, Uncle Mike. But yes, exactly 50% of you chose Delta, 25.7% saying Theta, 14.3% saying Gamma, 10% saying Vega, and appropriately enough, 0% of you choosing Rho.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, Uncle Mike, we spent a lot of time looking back on this episode, which was fun. I enjoy doing this. Clearly our audience does too, because these these top 10s always pop up in the tops for the year whenever we crunch the numbers. But let's look ahead a little bit now. We got an interesting weekend. Markets are kind of frothy again. What are you keeping an eye on until we gather here together on Monday, sir?
Well, I'm definitely wanting to keep an eye on row as much as I can, just out of spite right now. I want to go do some box spreads and some conversions and reversals. But aside from that, watching to see how the market reacts, the market just still really not showing its hand after the big sell-off yesterday. Looks like we're holding pretty tight at the 4,700 level for the SPX and waiting for something to happen, if you will, because I don't think we're going to be channeling like this for very long. But who knows? We'll see. And then also waiting to see if buyers come in on the 10-year note after the sell-off.
Unfortunately, that theme music, it can mean we're doing a top 10 rundown, but that's done. So that means we come to the end of this episode. What were your personal favorite episodes or moments? If you have those, hit us up. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you folks out there about what really resonated for you from the year for the option block. If it's some other shows too, of course, we'll welcome those as well. But for this show, we're looking for the option block there. Hit us up on all the usual channels. And, of course, I was joking with them earlier. If you want to go check out Tradosaurus over there in the land of the pit, have at it. They're doing stuff pretty much all day long over there in the land of the pit. You know where to go to learn more. Optionpit.com is the place to go. Mr. Uncle Mike, where should they go outside of BitcoinSucks.com if they want to reach out to you, sir?
A couple places. If you're looking for a financial advisor who works with the option product with a lot of his clients, go to my website, stcharleswealth.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, or you can be the first, and I mean the very first, because I just put this up a little right before the show, to view my latest YouTube video, What is a Put Option? I don't think I have any views yet, so go check it out on YouTube. St. Charles Wealth Management.
I haven't even seen it yet, so that'll be a good one. And we're going to work on getting those out to you listeners on our YouTube and things as well, so you folks can get more access to Uncle Mike. And by the way, Uncle Mike, while you were talking, I did just look for you. BitcoinSucks.com. Someone is squatting on it, but they have it available for sale. So if the price is right, you could be the owner of Bitcoin Sucks. What are you thinking? $8, $10? What are you going to offer them?
Don't want Bitcoin associated with my name, even if it does say sucks. Already thought about it.
Throw him a $5. See what he says. Yes, Bitcoin Sucks. Maybe you buy it for Uncle Mike as a belated holiday present. Of course, check him out. StCharlesWealth.com is the place to go. And on YouTube, you can find him on Twitter at Mike TOSAW. And we got to get on out of here. But don't worry. If you're in the secret club listening live, we'll be back in about 28 minutes with the once in the future and I believe present Dr. Vix to break down all the madness from last year in futures options, as well as talk about what's lighting things up right now in the realm of volatility and everything else. Should be a fun one. And then back again tomorrow, noon Central, with volatility views. And, of course, wrapping up the week the way we like to do, our first options oddities of the new year. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll see you back here on Monday, another episode of The Option Block.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.